A very warm welcome to ETV News. I am Grum Tariku. Now the news in detail. African and Caribbean scholars in the diaspora call on African countries to show solidarity with Ethiopia to fight neocolonialism. As a strong and ancient nation, Ethiopia is able to resolve its problem, they said, adding the standing by Ethiopia this time means quashing the ill intentions of the West to gamble on Africa. Goshu Meliso tells us more on this.
Has endured here for 16 centuries.
Africans in the diaspora and Pan-African activists gathered at the Ethiopian embassy in London to discuss global black history and heritage. Passionate participants call on Africans in all corners of the world to back the struggle of Ethiopia to say no to neocolonialism.
I love Ethiopia and I'm here in solidarity. The only country in the continent that has not been colonized, and we need to keep it that way. I think America and all the other nations of the world who are trying to infiltrate and take over and even have any sort of say in Ethiopian politics, economics and society in general need to mind their own business. Ethiopia is one of the only places that's never been colonized, and it's strong, it's steeped in history, and it's the legacy, and that is the world. You know, the world started from these sacred regions of Africa, and we need to come together and find solidarity. I'm just so pleased and happy and embracing the new center of global African initiative that's come into Ethiopia, and I would like to contribute and support wholeheartedly, and I think we need to come together as nations.
The intimidation and condemnation that the people and government of Ethiopia are experiencing from western parts right now emanate from their fear that the East African nation may set an example in the continent, completing a huge mega hydropower dam, they said.
The Ethiopian dam, the building of that, and I think is one of the largest in Africa, if not the largest, is very important to the economic survival of not only Ethiopia, but that entire region. The reason why there's a problem with the dam, or with the building of the dam, is this. Ethiopia is setting itself up as a global leader. The Western world don't really like when they see African countries leading the way in technology or in power. Anything to do with a dam is technology and power. And once you equip a people with power, you have given them energy. You have given them industry. You've given them commerce. You've given them all things to make them a great nation. And I think that's one of the reasons why I strongly feel
dividing Africa and creating rifts among its people has always been their colonialist approach. Ever since they stepped into the continent, these people in Africa should stand against systematic exploitation, activists underscored.
Well, it's very disruptive, and it's a classic tool from the West, because there are so many resources in Africa, and the divide and conquer rule of thumb is very much a Western tool, and so they do interfere in whenever a country like Ethiopia or wherever it may be across Africa wants to do for self. They want to interfere and interrupt these kind of progressions.
The No More movement Ethiopians launched a couple of weeks ago is gaining momentum in galvanizing Africans and friends of Africa to say no to subtle exploitation.
No more!
Meanwhile, African and Caribbean diasporas in the diaspora denounced the undue meddling of the U.S. and its allies into the internal affairs of Ethiopia. Recalling the mischief that the West did on the continent, the scholars urged fellow Africans not to allow them do it again under the guise of security and humanitarian crisis. Let's listen to what they have to say.
Now we know what's going on. When it happened the first time, we didn't understand. They scattered us, they divided us, and we saw our brothers and our sisters as enemies. Today, we know, because they've done it before. It should not be allowed to happen again. We should unite and not allow them to divide us, no matter what our conflicts are between us. When we're dealing with a common foe, we should come together.
We can do this on our own. We have all the resources. We do not need any intervention from any other country and continent. And our degradation is creating a windfall of other atrocities globally for people in the diaspora. Africa is ours, and it is our legacy to protect and to govern of our own accordance.
What is happening in Ethiopia is outside influence. I would rather use that outside influence and say it's Western influence, because it's quite clear that even the Eritreans are in support of the current Prime Minister.
Ethiopia has got a good aspiration. Ethiopia is the origin of our civilization. The first woman, the fossil of the first woman on earth was found in Ethiopia, Lucy. And we are worried because if we are trying to disrupt Ethiopia, it's like you are disrupting the origin of Africa. That's the way I see it.
They never respected our land in the beginning. They turned up, no passport, no immigration. They took what they wanted. They killed us. They've never respected our sovereignty. We need to establish our sovereignty and let them know that we are a sovereign nation, we are a sovereign continent, and that they should not interfere.
As the #NoMore movement continues around the world, Ethiopians in Korea, Norway, Italy, and Ireland took to the streets to voice their concern regarding foreign intervention in their homeland in particular and in Africa in general. The demonstrators condemned U.S. intervention into the independent nations against the will of their people. Take a look.
No more neo-colonialism! No more tribalism! No more tribalism! USA! Stop doing crimes in the name of humanitarian aid! USA! Stop doing crimes in the name of humanitarian aid! USA! Stop doing crimes in the name of democracy! USA! Stop doing crimes in the name of democracy! No more intervention! No more terrorism! No more TPLF! TPLF is a terrorist group! Ireland, stop supporting TPLF, the terrorist group! Simon Coveney! Stop supporting terrorist group! Stop supporting terrorist group! Hands of Ethiopia! No more intervention! No more political pressure! No more information warfare! No more terrorism! No more TPLF!
እኔ ከየትኛውም ሀገር ጋር ግጭት አልፈልግም። ከየትኛውም ሀገር ጋር አታካራ አልፈልግም። በሰላም የኢትዮጵያን ብልጽግና የሚረጋገጥበትን መንገድ መስራት ብቻ ነው የምፈልገው። እንድትረዱት የምፈልገው ሌሎች ኃይሎች በኢትዮጵያ ክብርና ጥቅም ከመጣችሁ አንገቴ ይቀላል እንጂ አይደረግም። እሱ በመጠምዘዝ የሚሆን ነገር የለም። ተላላኪ መንግስት ኢትዮጵያ ውስጥ አይፈጠርም። ጥቅም አላችሁ፣ ያን እያስታረቅን ተከባብረን አብረን እንኖራለን። ደሃነን ፈጥነን ለመውጣት ሰላም ያስፈልገናል። ፈጥነን ለመውጣት ትብብር ያስፈልገናል። ፈጥነን ለመውጣት ደጋፊ ያስፈልገናል። ፈጥነን ለመውጣት ግን ክብራችን መሸጥ አይጠበቅብንም።
America's current government and other foreign forces, including elements within the United Nations agencies and the TPLF rebels, are attempting to overthrow the democratically elected government of Ethiopia. The remarks are made by an independent writer, Graham Peebles, in his recent article, which exposes the plot behind the war in Tigray. Daniel Kasaun has more on this.
The impact of the year-long conflict in Ethiopia is devastating. Perhaps as many as 3 to 6 million people are internally displaced. Tens of thousands are being killed, women and girls raped, property trashed, land destroyed, livestock slaughtered by TPLF fighters. At this stage, it is difficult to see how a peaceful resolution can be reached. The government of Ethiopia has said it will not enter into negotiations until the TPLF withdraws. It's widely acknowledged that the Biden administration is behind the movement of intervention to replace the Abiy government and install the TPLF, less independent, as the US doesn't tolerate independent government.
When I say we, I mean Russia. We have been living under the pressure of common restrictions for many, many years. So, what's the outcome for those who have inflicted, who has imposed these restrictions? Have we reached any result they were proclaiming as the pretext of these restrictions? I don't see. So the same is with Ethiopia. Sometimes it seems to me that all these unilateral restrictions are in fact used not to reach any positive result, but to try to punish certain personalities or certain officials, but finally it turns to be a collective punishment of the whole people. It is not a constructive way of thinking.
In light of the NSA's response since the start of the conflict and the State Department's behind-the-scene troubles, his reputation appears duplicitous at best and is ignored by furious Ethiopians, many of whom attended protests recently. Huge crowds gathered under #NoMore in Addis Ababa, Washington, San Francisco, London, Pretoria and elsewhere, demanding an end to American interference in Ethiopia's affairs.
No more! No more! No more! No more! No more! No more!
There is growing anger among groups in other African nations who see American meddling in Ethiopia as an attack on Africa and itself, a colonial assault. From 1st January 2022, there is significant change on the ground. Ethiopia's special trade status, which enables Ethiopian goods to be sold into the United States free of import duty in AGOA, will be removed.
It's against the core foreign policy of the U.S. The core value of the U.S. or U.S. foreign policy is based on democracy, economic development, prosperity, literally. So it is against America's interest to delist Ethiopia from AGOA.
NSA's administration, self-righteous and arrogant, appear never to learn from their invasive mistakes or recognize the degree to which they are despised in certain parts of the world. It's not a sense of global responsibility and altruistic kindness that impels the United States to interfere in a nation's affairs. It is self-interest, corporate gain, fear and arrogance.
Even though I support the Democratic Party and always with Democrat, United States in last years took a different approach. We are waging a war against democratically elected government by the people of Ethiopia, for the people of Ethiopia. Therefore, United States waging a war is a proxy war.
Ethiopia is an ancient nation with a rich, diverse culture. It has never been colonized. This fact is a source of great pride to Ethiopians, who are a deeply proud people. They will never bow down, as one protester put it, not to terrorists or modern-day colonialists. Not now, not ever.
Although the situation in Addis Ababa remains calm, some international organizations based in the capital as well as few foreign embassies have been issuing alerts based on fake news. The United Nations continues to operate in Ethiopia, working with the federal and state government, it was disclosed. The UN staff have been on duty, says Catherine Suzy, UN humanitarian coordinator.
In every region of this country, we are present, providing food assistance, nutritional care, health services, clean water and sanitation, and shelter, amongst all other life-saving support. We are working closely with the government at the federal level and with the regional governments, and even with the waradas and kebeles where people in need are. We are committed to continue to provide humanitarian and development assistance to the people of Ethiopia.
Meanwhile, unashamed of their plot to overthrow the democratically elected Ethiopian government, some international organizations have been providing a sort of simulated emergency exit situations as if Addis Ababa was to fall. A leaked video shot in Addis Ababa showed staff of one of such organizations undertaking this simulated emergency situation. The UN humanitarian coordinator in Ethiopia has this to say regarding the video.
The United Nations in Ethiopia conducted a regular routine drill on 23rd November at 11 o'clock here at the headquarters of the UN Economic Commission for Africa in Addis Ababa. It is regrettable that during this routine yearly exercise, a video of the drill, which was taken by a third party at a nearby building overlooking the ECA compound, it was then posted on social media with a number of unfounded fake stories. 2 regular drills are carried out every year as per the requirement of the UN security policy, whereby every UN office and premise across the world is required to conduct these regular drills, in fact with staff members who are assigned role play. The UN in Ethiopia wishes to unequivocally reaffirm that the drill was part of an annual routine exercise as the safety and security of its staff are paramount. It is deplorable that this pre-planned routine exercise has been taken out of context and broadcast with fake narratives.
Even in the 20th century, with faith, courage, and a just cause, David will still beat Goliath.
ዛሬ በአንድነት በጋራ ሆነን የአድዋ ልጆች መሆናችንን ረስተው በአገዋ ሊያስፈራሩን ሞከሩ።
ተላላኪ መንግስት ኢትዮጵያ ውስጥ አይፈጠርም።
Ethiopia waged hostilities with Ethiopian Airlines.
A months-long investigation is an...
Well, this is the story of just one massacre.
አይደረግም እሱ።
አድዋ ነፃነት ነው፣ አገዋ ግን እርዳታ ነው።
ነፃነት በአገር ቀልድ አይሰራም። ራሱን ሰጥቶ ሀገሩን ለመታደግ የሚፈልግ ኃይል አለ። አሁን
ዛሬ በአንድነት በጋራ ሆነን ሀገር ሆነን እንደ ኢትዮጵያ ሰንቀን የምንሰጣት ምላሽ ለጠላት መርዶ ለወዳጆቻችን የምስራች ይሆናል።
You are watching news. Ethiopians and their government are teaching the world how to fight terrorism and neocolonialism, says Professor Alemayehu Gebremayam. Western countries, particularly the US, have been pretending to be neutral in the conflict in Ethiopia. However, they have been showing their solidarity with TPLF to create their puppet government in the country, Alemayehu noted. Jerusalem Bitsa has more on this.
The US and its allies are continuing their all-rounded conspiracy and pressure on the Ethiopian government in supporting the terrorist TPLF. A political science scholar, Professor Alemayehu Gebremayam, told ETV that though the US government did not negotiate with terrorist groups, including Al-Qaeda, Biden's administration has persisted pressuring the Ethiopian government to make a deal with the local terrorist TPLF.
Ethiopia is a victim of US state-sponsored terrorism. I've laid out the legal case against that. But basically what we're seeing is that the United States has sided with the terrorist TPLF and has been using diplomatic, political, economic, and other means to pressure the Ethiopian government to negotiate with this terrorist group, which is very curious because the United States itself does not negotiate with terrorists. The United States did not negotiate with Al-Qaeda after the Twin Towers attack in New York in 2000.
The scholar also appreciated the Ethiopian government, particularly the leadership and commitment of Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed to resist the Western's pressure.
I'm very happy that Prime Minister Abiy has been able to lead Ethiopia during these difficult times. But the fact that he's able now to go out into the battlefield and command the troops makes him unique leader among nations, among leaders in the world. No leader has ever done that, none to my knowledge, historically or otherwise. Leaders sit around their offices and let the soldiers die in the field. But here, the entire Ethiopian leadership is in the battlefield, and that makes Ethiopia exceptional.
Reacting on the recent leaked 2-hour-long secret meeting on Zoom among top US, UK and European Union diplomats with their long-standing TPLF member friends, Alemayehu says their act, particularly that Yamamoto's, is also a criminal conspiracy.
Abiy is not listening. He is not listening at all right now. And how are you going to reach him, to a person who's really in a corner?
Yamamoto even talks about the prime minister as someone who doesn't listen. He says Abiy doesn't listen, Abiy doesn't hear, as if Abiy has to listen to him. You see, this is the kind of white supremacy that just drives me crazy. That somehow from Washington, D.C. or from the State Department, they can sit here and say they will tell Dr. Abiy to do something, and he's supposed to get up and to jump up and do their bidding. And they openly talk about how the government of Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed should be removed and how they're going to replace it and so forth. So this is a criminal conspiracy. If we had time, I would go into the details of the criminal conspiracy.
He also criticized some Western media for deliberately distorting facts while producing stories to secure their interests and create psychological war against Ethiopia.
These news agencies pretend to be independent, but they're not. They are basically the propaganda arms of the United States government. That's well known. There's ample documentation how U.S. intelligence services use these media sources as a means of disseminating information, as a means of disseminating disinformation, and as a means of controlling public opinion and shaping public opinion as well. So I see that as part of the psychological warfare that is being waged on Ethiopia.
Alemayehu commends Ethiopia's way of instructing the world how to fight terrorism and neo-colonialism. Ethiopians and their government are making another golden history next to Adwa, he said.
This kind of nationalism, this kind of national fervor is unseen anywhere else. I don't know of any country where the entire population has risen up to defend its country. Ethiopians are teaching the world is a very simple lesson, and that is, united we stand, divided we fall. Divided we fall to terrorists, divided we fall to foreign imperialists and neo-colonialists. That's the singular lesson that the Ethiopians have taught the world.
While countries like the US continue pressuring the Ethiopian government and siding with the TPLF, Ethiopians and other Africans, as well as friends of Ethiopia globally, are voicing their resistance to neo-colonialism and the global media campaign against Ethiopia.
President of Somaliland, Musey Bahi Abdi, expressed solidarity with the people and government of Ethiopia, receiving Minister of Transport Dagmait Moges, President of Somali State Mustafa Mohammed, and Minister of Finance Ahmed Shide in Hargeisa. Musey Bahi affirmed his government's commitment to stand by Ethiopia at this trying time. The President and the visiting ministers discussed trade ties between Ethiopia and Somaliland. President of Somali State Mustafa Mohammed briefed President Musey about the strategic and important cooperation between Ethiopia and Somaliland for a strong and stable Horn of Africa. Now, a reminder of the headlines. African and Caribbean scholars in the diaspora denounce foreign interference in Ethiopia. Ethiopians took to the streets of Korea, Italy, Norway and Ireland to say no to neo-colonialism. You have been watching ETV News. Thank you for staying with us and have a pleasant